Hello and welcome to Inkblot Films Inkblot Ink Blog. The name is a work in progress. This is our new platform where we talk about movies.
Hello, I'm Serena from Inkblot Films and I'm going to tell you all about Contagion. Dun, dun, dun.
If you're watching this as it comes out, then we all know why I'm doing this in my living room and there's no need to talk about current events. If you're watching this in the future, then hey, remember that time there was a global pandemic? I'm so glad we can laugh about that now. And isn't it amazing how we all just stopped flying and driving everywhere and climate change has dropped as a result? Plus, getting people into that basic hygiene, am I right? Anyway, during this rather odd period where cinemas are all closed, I've taken it upon myself to jump back into some old movies and TV shows to review, along the rather cheery subjects of infections, pandemics and post-apocalyptic futures. And I've decided to pick for our first one, the film that everyone's watching at the moment, from 2011, Contagion.
I know it was a totally ridiculous idea to watch it with what's going on, but yeah, we did it.
Now, spoiler warning, there will be spoilers.
It was really interesting to watch considering the current situation. I don't think it would normally kind of get to me. I mean, I like films about pandemics and outbreaks. I don't know why. Getting that kind of fear of the unknown and the fact that it could happen. This time it was different because it felt very real.
Now, Contagion from 2011, which is directed by Steven Soderbergh, has an all-star cast. Lawrence Fishburne, Marion Cotillard, Kate Winslet, who's always dependable and has never really been terrible in anything, as is Matt Damon, who's getting paid in this. Gwyneth Paltrow. If sawdust could smile vacantly and win an Oscar, it'd be Gwyneth Paltrow. They made the right choice bumping her off in the first 10 minutes. Bryan Cranston was in about 2 scenes and hasn't been this underused since Godzilla 2014. Jennifer Ehle, best known as Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice in the 90s. Jude Law. Jude Law, can't pin you down, mate. I feel like he came to this film thinking, I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm going to wear a flat cap and weird fake teeth and have a strange crap Aussie accent. Like, what was up with that accent?
This is the most confusing thing for me in the film, and it makes absolutely no sense. Jude Law played this guy called Alan. He had an Australian accent. I have no idea why. It was a bad Australian accent. I mean, I can't do accents, but as far as I can remember, there was no reference to the fact that he was Australian. He was an internet celebrity, like a YouTuber, I guess. Like an anti-vaxxer kind of guy. It just made no sense.
See, I genuinely used to rate Jude Law as a character actor in the early 2000s. He did some fantastic performances in some really, really good films. He was Gigolo Joe in AI. He was Dickie Greenleaf in The Talented Mr. Ripley and gave a fantastically creepy performance as Maguire in Road to Perdition. See, somewhere in the early 2000s, he became kind of rubbish. And I think that gear change happened with the Alfie remake, which never happened. And then he started doing crap like King Arthur and The Holiday. Oh my God, Kate Winslet's also in The Holiday. I take it back. Kate Winslet has been terrible. She's terrible in The Holiday. Everyone is terrible in The Holiday. The Holiday is terrible. There's more stars in the cast, but they're not important to the story of Contagion. In fact, none of the cast necessarily are important to the story.
At the beginning, it all kicks off when Gwyneth Paltrow's character Beth gets really ill. She hooks up with some guy that she knows in Chicago, but we don't see him. She gets really ill after she's got home. Yeah, the first thing I thought is, well, she's not going to die because she's a big Hollywood actress. They're not going to kill her off in the first scene. But then she dies. And you see them cutting her head open, so she's definitely dead. Don't watch that bit if you don't like gore, because that bit's pretty gross. They did use her in flashbacks later, so she wasn't in literally like one scene. The other thing that was kind of noticeable in the film was that everything was filmed in this sort of yellowish tinge, and it just made me think of the DVD cover, very yellowy. Like literally those pictures of them yellow, that's probably how yellow they were in the film. You know, illness, yellow, I don't know. That's something for people that know about film to talk about.
I like Soderbergh, though I've not seen all his films, but to me they fall into two categories: the quirky comedy and heist films, the gritty realistic ones, and then sometimes there's a crossover into dramedy. Now, I noticed in developing his style with 1998's Out of Sight, which stars Jennifer Lopez and George Clooney. Now, he was definitely trying to emulate that Tarantino style with a sassy script and a comedy kidnap plot that a lot of films in the mid to late 90s were emulating. Still really good though, and he developed his style further with The Limey, which if you haven't seen it is a really good film. Go watch it. Terence Stamp is amazing in it. Then he developed that style with the Ocean's Trilogy. Is that what it's called? Erin Brockovich, The Informant, and Behind the Candelabra. Erin Brockovich, interestingly, was released in 2000, the same year that Soderbergh also directed Traffic, which is my favourite of his work. It definitely started to define his gritty, realistic style, which is very evident here in Contagion. Now, I find with Soderbergh's dramas that the lead characters tend to not have a defined character. They seem like merely a function so that the story can continue, which isn't necessarily a bad thing with the way he does them, but it can put the film at risk of feeling a little bit flat and unmemorable.
I can't really give an opinion on the film as a film. It's just all I could think about was the similarities with what's going on at the moment. Well, I didn't feel anything really for the characters. I wasn't like rooting for them. I mean, obviously, I didn't really want Matt Damon's Mitch or his daughter to die because they were our main people that we were following. And same with the doctors. There were a lot of doctors. It's like a documentary, but not, because it's not.
And I honestly couldn't tell you any defining characteristics of any of the people in Contagion, other than Marion Cotillard being a bit of a cold-hearted bitch who gets kidnapped, and Lawrence Fishburne being nice by donating his vaccine at the end to the son of the man who dobbed him in. Another plot point that went nowhere, but I'll talk about that in a bit.
Lawrence Fishburne plays Dr. Ellis Cheever, who is one of the guys researching this virus. There was a journalist asking him, people were saying that they're overreacting to this virus, and he said, "I'd rather the news story be that we overreacted than have people dying because we didn't do enough." And that rang really true for me in our current crisis.
So as with Traffic, Shay and Side Effects, Contagion has that multiple intersecting storyline thing going on, which I do love when it's done well, like in Magnolia. When it's done badly, like in Love Actually, it makes me weep for the pretentious delusions of bad writers trying to seem clever in the eyes of vapid morons. Contagion luckily makes this work, but not 100%. See, the film is about procedure and how it affects all of us, and I'm actually finding it hard to differentiate the film from reality at the moment, but we may as well use that as a talking point.
The biggest thing for me was the comparison to COVID-19 right now. It was scarily real for me. I was just very aware of every time there was human contact. I mean, they even mentioned social distancing in the film, but then they didn't seem to actually do it because they all just seemed to be hanging out and walking around.
As a film, it's good. It's very, very good. A little monotonous, I'd say, in parts, yet it's driven forward by Cliff Martinez's pulsing score in the same way that Trent Reznor's Oscar-winning score for Social Network did, propelling it from one scene to another, so you never truly get bored. The performances are good though, as I said, mostly functional, but everyone in it is stellar, and it's really interesting to see a A-list cast in a film like this, which doesn't happen very often. A film about a subject that doesn't happen, or hasn't since 1995's Outbreak, which is terrible.
Like normally I kind of zone out in all the kind of sciencey babble in films. This time everything was just so similar to COVID-19. Like they said, it was a novel virus similar to SARS, swine flu, bird flu. The more they were talking about it, and I just said, if this ends up being caused by bats, I'm going to freak out. Then a few minutes later, they started talking about bats. The virus actually came from an infected bat, which had dropped some fruit that it was eating. It fell down to in a pig pen, and the pig ate it. And then the pig, you see, taken to be slaughtered by this chef at a restaurant. And it happens to be the restaurant that Beth, Gwyneth Paltrow's character, eats at. And she had a photo with him. So it kind of shows at the end exactly how all that happened. So she's patient zero.
What the film does nail is the viral aspect of the MEV1 virus and how terrifying it is. There's these very specific shots of people holding handrails, picking up mugs and pausing at certain points so that it just lets you feel, without being explicit, that anything you touch will spread this thing, and it properly makes you freak out in the same way that everyone's kind of freaking out right now.
Weirdly, because we watched it on Netflix, and even though I've got the DVD because it was just easier, but Netflix didn't have what it was meant to have, which is like the time frame. So it would have like day 1, day 7, day 100. I don't know why, but it didn't have that. So it wasn't very obvious, the time frame. And it wasn't until I was looking up stuff about the film that I realised that it was meant to have that.
What I love is how it charts how the scientists try and counter the virus with a vaccine, and they chart the failures as well as the successes. After doing a little bit of research, I found that it is actually quite an accurate film, one of the most scientifically accurate films that's been made to date about viruses and pandemics.
I did a bit of research into the actual science of the film because I like science. And I discovered that this gentleman called Dr. Ian Lipkin was the consulting expert on the film. He's an expert in infectious diseases. And if you Google him, there's a lot of news stories about him recently because he actually got COVID-19. So that's someone who actually works in that field and is as careful as they could possibly be, and he actually got it. As far as I can tell, he's fine now. But he was actually a consultant on the film, which is why the science is so good and why everything seems so realistic. So it's not some kind of freaky prediction. It's literally from his own experiences. He was in Beijing in 2003 during the SARS outbreak. So a lot of it is from his experience of that, MEV1. It was modelled on the Nipah virus in Malaysia in 1999, which was caused by bats and pigs, which is why it seems so eerie at first about the similarities. But actually it is just to be expected because that's, how virus outbreaks work. The reason it's so similar to now is because they knew that it would happen. They didn't know when or how, but they knew that we were due to have a big outbreak, a pandemic like this.
Most of all, as I said earlier, this film nails the paranoia aspect. How everything we touch, every person that we're with, can spread a virus of this magnitude. And you know what? It has. And that's the terrifying thing. That's where my appreciation of a film as an art film blurs with what we're living in right now, and then it feels more like a documentary, and that is freaky. Now, to me, the plot is kind of thin. It's more of an account of plausible events, but I think that's to the film's benefit. It doesn't bog itself down with unnecessary melodrama or cheesy emotion, but there are some plot points that don't work. Now, we never find out who the guy is who Gwyneth Paltrow's been cheating with. We assume he dies because she did, but it's never really shown or ever brought back. In fact, Matt Damon kind of gets over the whole thing remarkably quickly, especially seeing as he found out that she cheated on him as she died and his son died. I know he's just holding it together for his daughter and because it's a global pandemic, but he kind of just gets over the whole thing really quickly, which is a little bit weird. I'd have loved a Captain Phillips moment from him where he just broke down at the end, which I thought was going to happen. I thought we'd get a little bit of closure with that as well in one of those final scenes when Matt Damon's going through the camera, going through all the pictures of Gwyneth Paltrow in China. I thought he'd scroll through and eventually find the man that she's been cheating on him with, I almost expected a cheesy plot point where it was Lawrence Fishburne or something and it would be like, whoa, twist ending. I'm glad they didn't do that, and he did have a crying moment, which was good. But it's also a bit pointless. Like, why did she have to cheat on him? What was that even there for? If it wasn't going to get brought back, why even have that?
I don't know. I kept expecting this guy. It turned out to be her ex-husband, I think. I kept expecting him to appear and there be some big dramatic thing, but there wasn't. And I actually Googled it afterwards, and apparently we did see him, and he was dead, and you saw his wife mourning for him. But I completely missed that bit.
I'm not even sure what the point of that subplot with Marion Cotillard being kidnapped and ransomed. What was the point in that? I'm sure it had some political ramification, but I didn't really follow it or why it was there. It just seemed to be a little bit of a pointless through line. And to be honest, halfway through, because they didn't go back to her, I totally forgot that storyline was there. I think there was a bit where Lawrence Fishburne helps his wife or his girlfriend or something by telling her on the phone to get out of town first, and she does, but then the janitor overhears it and then goes to the press, and then he gets taken off some press junket so he can't talk anymore, but then that's all fine because he still keeps his job. I don't even know what the point in that whole bit was. It seemed a little bit pointless, and I get it, they're probably trying to make some political statement about the whole thing, but it didn't need it. It was a film about a virus. All these extra scenes just weren't necessary. I was paranoid enough with the first act. So essentially there's no payoff to any of these random little plot points, but they don't ruin the film. They just make you think after the experience, oh yeah, what was that all about? Or why did they even have that character in there?
What it did do, the film, is give me a really big insight into what actual authorities might be going through, and also how early that they probably knew about it. So for instance, in the film, they predicted panic buying. Is that something that would put the government off releasing more information if they think that people are going to just do what they did? You know, people did panic buy. It does make me wonder if that's why COVID-19 was played down in this country at the beginning, because they didn't want people to go into panic mode. They wanted to get things in order first. I mean, I don't think they did get anything in order.
Now, there are some absolutely fantastic parts of this film though. One of those is Jude Law's conspiracy guy, who leads an upswell of conspiracy theorists and fanatics. And this is happening in real life already with 5G and the anti-vaxxers and flat earthers.
Then we get this guy, Jude Law's character. He's a conspiracy theorist. He's like anti-big pharma. From what I gather, he's got 12 million followers, and he says that there's this drug called Forsythia, which can cure the virus, which he then, live on video, injects himself with this drug. The next day he shows that he's cured. And then you see him walking down the street when there's all this chaos and looting, and he sees a friend of his who's pregnant, and she looks very ill and she's clearly going to die, and she begs him for a dose of this drug. He just tells her he doesn't have any more, and it seems like there's quite a hesitance in his manner. And it turns out that he actually lied and he didn't even have the virus. So when he took the drug, it didn't cure him because he didn't have it to start with. So he lied to his 12 million followers for attention, to show up the government, big pharma, I don't know. But he ended up, towards the end of the film, being arrested. One of the things was for manslaughter because, well, he's telling people to take a drug that would cure the virus when it doesn't. And it actually reminded me of President Trump, because he has been telling people that if they take this anti-malaria drug, hydroxychloroquine, it can prevent or cure COVID-19. The actual drug is being researched by scientists, but it's nowhere near safe or proven to be effective, and definitely not in its current state. But there have been people who have died from taking it because they believe when Trump has said these things. I really hope that people are made accountable. This guy, Jude Law's character, Alan, he got bailed out because his 12 million followers love him, and I guess they do like a GoFundMe to get him out of jail. But I mean, it just leaves it at that. There's no kind of explanation of whether he actually does get done for it or if he just walks around free.
I really love the dystopian like feel after the lockdown happens, all the riots and the looting. It's like Primark on Boxing Day.
So the very opening scene was people coughing in public everywhere. And immediately I was thinking, well, this is going to be great for my anxiety about coronavirus. If I'd watched this before, I probably wouldn't have even thought anything of it. But I was just very aware that each of those hands was touching and other people were touching, and coughing. Yeah, definitely a lot of coughing.
And now the parallels to real life, which is why you should watch it right now. It is note for note everything that's happening with the corona thing that we don't speak about. All of the things from the disease coming from bats, to the social isolation, to washing your hands and not touching your face, to how the scientists are trying to come up with a vaccine. Everything that's happening at the moment is charted in that film, which shows that either the writers had some fantastic insight to not only how viruses spread, but also how science works and how politics work.
It's quite a good insight into the behind the scenes, because we just see what the media tells us, what we see on social media. In this film, it was the opposite.
And it's eerily accurate to what's happening right now. We are in the midst of a real life contagion. I don't think we've ever had a pandemic on this scale before. And somehow this film predicted it. It's nuts. Or is it a conspiracy to make more sales on the film? It's definitely not a conspiracy. So, in conclusion, is Contagion a good film? Yes, yeah, it's very good. Is it the best film ever? No. And that's probably why I didn't watch it upon its release. That, and I didn't want to see something that will really fire up my OCD. Is it relevant though? More than ever. Is it important for people to watch? Absolutely, especially now.
Don't watch it at the moment if you think your anxieties are going to go mad, because it is quite scary.
If a film can deliver a serious message and change your thinking on a subject while still being entertaining and thrilling in parts, then it's worth everyone watching it.
It's definitely not an enjoyable film, but it definitely gave some insight and made me think about everything in a different way.
I don't think I'll ever want to watch it again, and I am sad that half the cast died, except for Gwyneth Paltrow.
The film ended really bleakly. It like I said, it showed the chain of events that led to Beth and subsequent victims getting infected. Bat, pig, man, food, woman. There was no kind of happy ending. I mean, I guess Matt Damon's character survived, as did his daughter. So I guess that's a happy ending.
But it does end positively enough to give us all hope for the human spirit and the advances in medical science.
I mean, his wife and his stepson died.
Hope for the human spirit.
Watch it when all of this is over. Or also, if you are a complete masochist and you just want to make yourself feel even worse.
Hope for the human spirit.
That's a great reason to watch it.
So if you get a chance, watch Contagion. Not only is it a fantastic film, but it's also relevant right now. And let's hope that the happy ending in the film is mirrored in real life.
Yeah.
Now, thank you all for watching. I've been Jay, doing this week's Inkblots Ink blog, and I'll be back again for another review of a film which is equally as depressing and post-apocalyptic. Please, everybody, stay safe, and please, whatever you do, don't watch The Holiday. It is literally the worst film ever.